It's better to drive a slow car fast than drive a fast car slow is a quote that has been thrown around the car community for quite some time now. And even though it's mainly used by people who just own a slow car and want to justify their purchase to random people on the internet, the quote really does have some truth behind it. Picture this: the world is empty, there's no such thing as clout anymore, no hot girls can be able to see you driving, and you find the keys to a Lamborghini that has a restrictor plate on it, allowing the car to only reach 60 miles per hour. But right next to that is a bone stock Mazda Miata with the roof down and the keys in the ignition, ready to use all 100 horses to absolutely carve down empty back roads like an artist stroking his paintbrush. Which one are you taking? My name is Mark Roden, and this is a deep dive on the Mazda Miata.
Jesus Christ, dude.
The Mazda Miata, or more commonly known as the Mazda MX-5 in most countries, first flew onto the scene in 1989, and at first the public was very confused. Up until this point, Mazda had a very good track record of making interesting and unique sports cars, from the most popular RX cars like the RX-3 and the RX-7, all the way to the cars that were a little bit less popular like the Mazda 323 GTX. And when the Miata came out, it was once again something very unique that not many car companies were making yet, especially not in America. We had seen roadsters before, but nothing that was this small and affordable, and all this stuff together made for the reviews to be incredibly lopsided. You had one side of the argument saying this car was cool and was a great way for people to learn how to drive a sports car without having to pay sports car money, but then you had the other side who were just used to big old V8s and German sedans that saw this car as nothing more than a girl's perfect Sunday cruiser. Over time, we have luckily shifted away from the second crowd, and the majority of people nowadays would agree that the Miata is a very unique car that absolutely does deserve the title as a sports car. But I find it so interesting how diverse the views were for this car. Whenever I've done one of these deep dives, the public either loves it, like the Honda Prelude, or they hate it, like the Subaru SVX, but not many have a perfect mixture of hate and love, and that right there makes the Miata pretty damn special.
Feast your eyes, Patrick.
What is it?
The first generation, or NA Miata, was, like I said, first built in 1989 and was a two-door, two-seater roadster sports car that had a very affordable price tag at only $14,000, which roughly translates to only $32,000 in today's money. That's around the same price as something like a new Camry today. The car also did have some nice little features about it, like pop-up headlights, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, and a 1.6-liter inline-4 sitting under the hood, making 115 horsepower, going directly to the rear wheels. It was all around a very good package, and over time it only got better. In 1993, they would give the car a 1.8-liter inline-4, and that extra 0.2 liters would pump the power up to 128 horsepower, which was more than enough if you knew how to use it, because like I said before, this car had perfect weight distribution. They also wanted to make it as light as possible, and in doing so, they would get rid of things like power steering and power brakes in the base model and would offer the car with a 5-speed manual as standard to try and save as much weight as possible. The result was a sports car that weighed in at only 2,100 pounds before you do any weight reduction yourself. So yes, this car was not fast in a straight line like most people were used to in the 90s, but you take this thing to the twisties and you will fully understand why people love these cars so much. After being very successful with the first generation and the RX-7 sales dropping like crazy due to having a rotary still going into the 2000s, Mazda knew they found their next best sports car with the Miata, so naturally they would make it again. In 1998, the second generation, or NB Miata, was finally released to the public, and it was literally everything great about the first generation, but just a little bit better. The car was now being offered with the 1.8 liter only, but it now made 142 horsepower. It did sadly get rid of the pop-up headlights, but they did did add a bunch of new safety features and completely revised the interior to make it a whole lot more modern. I feel like a lot of people completely disregard any Miata that isn't the NA when they absolutely should not. These other Miatas may not be as cool looking as the first generation, but they did continue to just get better and better on paper. The NB Miata also came out with the Mazda Speed MX-5 in 2001, which is still to this day the only Miata offered with a turbo from factory, and it made a whopping 178 horsepower in a car that was still weighing in at only 2,200 pounds. The NB Miata was just as successful as the first generation NA Miata. As a matter of fact, by the year 2000, they broke the record for best-selling two-seater sports car in history. But nowadays, these cars are actually somehow cheaper than the NA Miata, even though they are kind of better in every single way. Yes, I completely agree that the looks of the NA Miata will never be able to be topped, but if we're looking at pure value and performance, then the NB Miata is honestly a better option right now, since NAs are selling for right around $5,000 and NBs are selling for right around $4,000. But we all know that is not where the Miata reign of terror stopped, so let's just get the next one out of the way.
One car, one driver, one feeling.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
The third generation, or NC Miata, would come out in 2005, and even though the sales numbers and performance was once again massively jumped up, this car truly was an insult to any Miata fan. It wasn't just that the next generation was super ugly, it was everything else that it stood for, to be honest. Remember how I said that the NA got rid of the damn power steering and power brakes to cut weight? Well, the NC Miata was the heaviest model yet, weighing in at almost 2,500 pounds. And before you say, well, the power was probably higher to make up for it, you are right. They got rid of the 1.8 liter in most markets and instead opted for the new 2 liter inline-4 that would make 170 horsepower, still going to the rear wheels. They also got rid of the soft top convertible. For some reason, instead, the car was only offered with a retractable hardtop. Nobody asked for that. There are a couple of cool things that the NC did do, though, like the introduction of a limited slip differential, which honestly goes a long way, and I'm super happy that this car has that. They also did manage to keep the car with a perfect 50-50 weight distribution, but sadly, everyone that has driven both the NA and the NC always say that the NC just doesn't feel like a Miata, and I think that's the perfect way to describe the NC Miata. It is a really good car, but it just isn't a good Miata. But I feel like I don't have to add on to all the hate that poor Mazda got when they made the NC.
Fucking gun, you fucking riot shield. What else you want me to
Oh, riot shield! I'm a pussy that use riot shield!
Oh, now I'm a what do you want me to use? You tell me what you want me to fucking use.
That's prestige, you fucking...
The next generation, and so far the final generation of the Miata, would come out in 2015 and was called the ND Miata, of course, because these gents like to practice the alphabet a little bit. In my opinion, the ND Miata was finally going back to the roots of what made Miata so great. It first of all looks incredible. It has this like oddly aggressive look that somehow works, even though the NA Miata looks like my dog when I pull out dog treats. But it is still tiny enough to appeal to the kind of people who like to drive in those style of vehicles. But sadly, I feel like this generation is incredibly underrated. The car kept the 2 liter inline-4, but it of course made a little bit more horsepower at 181 horsepower, which doesn't sound like that great of a jump from the previous generation, but remember, the NC Miata had 170 horsepower and weighed 2,500 pounds. This one had 181 horsepower and was now weighing in at 2,300 pounds, finally going back to being as lightweight as possible. I feel like the NC Miata might have left a bad taste in the community's mouth, which sucks because I freaking love the ND Miata and it, in my opinion, 100% lives up to the MX-5 nameplate. The Mazda MX-5 Miata started its life as a car that was only loved by people who truly appreciate a well-handling go-kart, and over time it has luckily done nothing but built up its reputation as a real sports car, and nowadays the car has 181 horsepower, which is honestly not that far off from other sports cars that the entire community loves, like the Civic Si or Volkswagen GTI, except the Miata doesn't even weigh close to the same amount as those other cars. So yes, the Miata is still slow in a straight line, and it most likely will never not be, but you can still buy one in 2023 that comes with a 6-speed manual, 2 seats, good looks, decent power, and amazing handling, all for less than you will be paying for a new Civic Si. And for anyone looking to get into any form of motorsports on a budget, the NA and NB Miata are still amazing options to this day, arguably one of the best options if you're looking for an autocross or track-oriented car. And even though they are becoming way too overpriced and way too overhyped, being able to get into a Miata for under 5K is still a very good deal for me. No, the Miata is not perfect. It never will be, and it will absolutely never appeal to everybody in the car community. But if you look at what Mazda was trying to do with this car and then compare it to what they actually did, you should be able to answer what makes the Miata so great. That is the end of today's deep dive, or what makes it great on the wonderful Mazda Miata. Let me know if you enjoyed in the comments below, and let me know what other cars you'd like to see me do a deep dives on. The next one is probably going to be on the BMW E36, but I will do other cars if you'd like me to. I love doing these videos, but at the same time, I hate editing them. It takes so much time. It is so difficult, but writing the scripts is fun because like I get to look up cars, I get to get all passionate about my writing, and I like to talk about it. Goodness gracious, I got like hiccups or something. But the actual editing part, dude, it takes so long, and I suck at editing, so it takes even longer because I suck. Like, obviously, if I gave all this stuff to like somebody else and they edited it efficiently, they could probably do it in like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Me? No, sir. That ain't happening. It takes me a while. I don't even know how long it takes me, but it takes me a while. So either way, though, I am going to keep doing them, so let me know what other cars you'd like to see me do deep dives on. Next is definitely going to be the E36, because I already wrote out the script for that one, so it's already like prepped and ready to go. But if you guys want to see a different car, let me know, and I'll start writing the script, and we can do that after the E36. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.